It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 31, looking at the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode is looking at the players of Zambia. Part 1, the candidates. Here we go! Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 31 on the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode covers Zambia's players. Zambia won the African Cup in 2012, a very special year. They did qualify for the 2023 African Cup last time, so we did cover them in our mediacast there. And that had been the first time since 2015. So this cup makes it 2 in a row for Zambia. Just a note on where we're at in our mediacasts. Last summer, we previewed the groups, teams, and players for the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup. We also did a mediacast introducing ourselves. It covers some of the priorities and quirks of what we do, and it also has a quiz, which is still alive. Winners will get a mention on the mediacast covering the team of their choice. After this African Cup, we will tackle the massive 48-team World Cup in the summer of 2026. So stay tuned for previews of that starting in the springtime of 2026. Okay, so we're doing this mediacast in 2 parts. Part 1 here is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. We examine the participation of players in games over the recent period, as well as a couple of other factors to categorize players into definite, likely, possible but unlikely, and seemingly off the squad. So that means kind of likely to be selected for the final squad. We'll go into more details on the players we think likely to reach the final squad, and less, perhaps just even the names of players unlikely to get there. Part 2 will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected, probably in early to mid-December. At that time, we'll go back over the list that we create here and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover things like injuries and surprise selections. So, this episode has 3 sections. Section 1, we look at some general information on the team. Section 2 is the main section where we cover the candidates in each position. And in Section 3, we summarize and conclude, especially focusing on injuries to keep an eye on. Let's begin then with Section 1. And we start with a few comments on the squad, big names off the squad. No really big names for Zambia on the way out. Probably the biggest is Roderick Kabwe. He only has 48 caps, but that actually is quite a lot for a small team, relatively speaking. Kabwe with Zambia since 2012 and last appeared in January 2024. So when we get to his position, left defenders, we will talk about it a little bit more. Let's talk about club affiliations, or the general quality of clubs that Zambia plays for. Half of the players are based in Zambia. The next step up for players there is probably playing in South African League or for one of the stronger teams in other African countries, such as TP Mazembe in Congo DR or Simba in Tanzania. 5 players here are with clubs in Israel, and that's likely a result of Israeli manager Avram Grant having been the manager. Smaller clubs in Europe are quite represented here. I would say almost half of the players there. And I know my math is not working out there, but it's true. Quite a few players are with clubs at the level of, say, Reed in Austria, Cagliari in Italy, or Hibernian in Scotland. So not really top clubs there, but respectable clubs. Only one player is with a top league club in Europe, and perhaps you can guess who that is, or else you have to listen to the whole podcast to find out. Okay, let's move on to recent games in the build-up to the Cup here. So we're examining positions of players from the from just after the 2024 African Cup. And I'll actually just clear up a little nomenclature here by saying I'm going to call the 2021 African Cup the 2022 African Cup, because that's when it was played. Similarly, the 2023 African Cup, I'll be probably referring to it as the 2024 African Cup. So from March 2024 to October 2025, that is the period we're covering, and Zambia played 14 games over that time. Let's take a look at them quickly. So we will be using the last, where am I here? Okay, we will be using the last African Cup as our starting point. So Zambia played 3 games in there, and we will begin by talking about who played in the positions there. Next, we have 2 friendlies in March of 2024. And in June of 2024, 2 World Cup qualifiers for the 2026 World Cup. In June and July of 2024, they played in the COSAFA Cup. I'll talk a little bit about that at the end, but it's actually not included in our count. Nevertheless, they did play 3 games there. 2024 in the fall, we had qualifying for this 2025 African Cup. All the qualifying was done there, so 6 games for Zambia there. Another kind of local competition, the African National Championship. The qualifying for that was in December of 2024. That was 2 games. Again, that's not included in the count. March 2025 is a World Cup qualifier, but they only had 1 game there. So in the other game, they played a friendly against Russia, and that makes up the 2 games in March 2025. Over the summer of 2025, they were quite busy. The COSAFA Cup, 2 games there, and the African National Championship, I believe that was 4 games. Again, neither of those included in the count. And finally, for the 2026 World Cup, finally in the fall of 2025, that should read, we have the last of the 2026 World Cup qualifying games. And their manager was fired after that. We'll talk about that right at the beginning of section 2, because they didn't perform as well as hoped there. So that'll be one of the issues we'll talk about there. Now, in terms of formations, we'll take a quick look at that, but we won't go into detail about it. Rather, I'm going to summarize it. So out of the 14 games, 50% of them were in a 4-3-3 formation. So that's probably the best way to envisage Zambia, in a 4-3-3 formation. Actually, about a third of the time they did use a 4-5-1 formation. That was 5 out of the 14 games. And then 2 other formations, which I won't get into, but what I will say about the other formations is that in all cases, it is a 3 line. So there are 3 lines. We don't have anything like a 4-2-2-2 or a 4-2-3-1. So it's a single line of midfielders, which means there's not a lot of distinction between defensive and central midfielders. Here, 86% of the time, we have a 4-man back line. That means 2 central defenders and a right back and a left back. And in 14% of the games, we see a 3-man central defense. And just the same, too, for the forward line. In 86% of games, it's a single forward. In the 4-3-3, we consider it a single forward with a left and a right attacking midfielder. So we don't see it as 3 forwards. So 86% of the time, a single forward, and then just 14% of the time, they play with 2 forwards. Okay, so that is relevant to what we present in section 2. And we finish with their upcoming games. So there are no qualification games, just the the playoffs for African qualification there, but Zambia didn't reach the playoffs, so they have no duties in November. So they're playing a friendly on November 14th in South Africa. That's the only game scheduled, but they probably will schedule some games before the Cup. And we'll have to wait until part 2 to take a look at those because they haven't been scheduled yet. That's it for section 1. And we move on to section 2, our main order of business here, looking at the candidates. We begin with the manager, and yes, some big news here. The manager was, until very recently, Avram Grant. And we won't get into introducing him because he's now gone from the team. As I said, he was fired or he was let go after the 2026 World Cup qualification games. So there we go. Avram Grant had been their manager from December 2022 until October 2025, just not long ago. Here. He led them through the 2024 African Cup. He actually came in 2 games into qualification there, so he completed qualification. They finished first ahead of Ivory Coast there, and he led them through the Cup, and then led them through qualification for this Cup, where again they finished first over Ivory Coast and have reached the Cup. However, they reached the Cup in the fall of 2024, and since then they've been doing World Cup qualifying, and that didn't go so well. They finished 4th of 6th in their group with 3 wins and 5 losses and finished behind Tanzania. So he was let go after that. Currently the post is vacant, so we'll have to update in part 2 whether they found someone, but they haven't found anyone yet. So they are without a manager. Of course, they'll have to find someone before the tournament begins. Okay, that is the manager situation. Let's move on to goalkeepers. And we'll begin by introducing the names of the candidates and their likelihood of making it. And that's based on their participation, which we'll talk about going forward. So a definite candidate, we have Lawrence Mulenga there, and then a possible candidate, Toaster Sabata, just at the possible level, which may surprise some. And then 2 others at the possible level, Charles Columba and Patrick Chuma. And then 2 at the possible but unlikely level. And we'll just deal with them quickly here. We won't give too much information unless they're actually selected. Then in part 2, we'll maybe add some information. Victor Chabu has not been selected for the last 7 games there, so we think he's kind of out of the picture. And the last one is Francis Mwanza, who was actually selected for the last African Cup as a backup keeper, but has not been selected since January 2024, or since that last African Cup. Okay, let's go back and look at the more likely players in a bit more detail then, beginning with our definite candidate, Lawrence Mulenga. He has been with Zambia since 2018, and he has 24 caps for the national team and is 27 years old. And he plays in Zambia and was a starter in the 2023 African Cup here. However, he only started about half of the games here. We'll cover that in the last section when we sorry, I'm a bit lost. When we summarize the position, he was on the bench for 4 though, and there were only 2 matches that he wasn't selected for. So we do think he's a definite candidate. We didn't put anyone at the likely level, and we have Toaster and Sabata at the possible level. And he's been with Zambia since 2013 with 44 caps, so actually more experienced on the national team than Mulenga. He is 32 years old, and he plays for a South African team called Sekhuhun United there, and that's his second stint with them. Otherwise, he was with teams in Zambia. And selected for the preliminary squad for the 2015 African Cup and the second backup keeper. He was not selected. He didn't make the cut in 2015, but he was selected for the 2023 African Cup as the backup keeper. He started 6 of their games over the period, so you might be saying, hey, wait, what's going on? The problem is he was not selected for the last the last 2 matches. Oh, only 2 matches. I'm actually going to move him up to likely then, because that's a bit harsh. Toasted and Sabata, but we are a bit confused by the fact that he was not selected for the last 2 matches, and that's why we moved him down. Anyway, we'll consider him a likely candidate because he has been back up for quite a while. Next, we have 2 possible candidates. Charles Kalumba, he's been with the team since 2022 with 8 caps. And he plays in Zambia. I think most of his caps are, though, in those smaller competitions like the COSAFA Cup. And he was a goalkeeper in the African National Championship in the summer of 2025. But he doesn't have any tournament experience, nor does Patrick Chuma. He's 24 years old with no caps for Zambia, and he plays in Zambia, but we'll see why we put them as possible candidates more in the summary. And in fact, that's what we're moving to in the last section for goalkeepers here, the summary of the position. So Lawrence Mulenga started all 3 games in the last African Cup there, and went on to start most of the games after. A little more than half of the games anyway. But in October 2024, he was injured in a game and subbed out. It was actually Francis Mwanza who came in as a sub. Mulenga didn't return to the starting position despite being on the bench for 3 of the 5 games when he was out, but he did return to start the last 2 games there. Although it was Francis Mwanza who subbed in for him, it was actually Tosta and Sabata who took over the starting position for all 5 of the games that Mulenga was out. However, neither of these 2 were selected for the last 2 games, and Patrick Chuma, who had only ever appeared once on the bench back in January 2024, was called in as the keeper. Charles Kalumba, who had been on the bench for about half of the games throughout the period, was the backup keeper. So we don't know what's going on. I know it's a bit consistent to kind of lower Sabata's ranking because he missed the last 2 games when Lawrence Mulenga did too. Perhaps they were trying out a new keeper, or we're not sure what's going on. But anyway, in part 2, probably in early to mid-January, that's when we'll be considering who we think is going to be the starter. We'll be predicting starters, and we hopefully will have a couple of more games to go on in helping us with that prediction. Okay, let's move on then to defenders, and we begin with central defenders here. This is usually, as we said in Section 1, a 2-man position, but 14% of the time, or 2 out of the 14 games, they fielded a 3-man defense. Let's take a look at the candidates. We have Kabaso Chongo as a definite candidate, and also Gift Mfande, both definite candidates. At the likely level, we have Dominic Chanda. And then at the possible level, we have Frankie Musonda, Stopila Sunzu, and that's it. We have one player at the seemingly off the squad level, Tandy Mwape, so I'll deal with him here. We won't give any much information here, but we'll say he actually was a starter in the 2024 African Cup there, but he last appeared in October of 2024. So Tandy Mwape seems to be off the team. Let's take a closer look at the more likely candidates then, beginning with definite candidate Kabaso Chongo. He's been with the team since 2013 and he has 56 caps and 1 goal. He's 33 years old. He's played mostly in Zambia. He's in Zambia now with Zesco United. That's one of the bigger teams in Zambia. But he did spend 11 years with TP Mazembe, probably the biggest team in Congo DR there. He was not selected for the 2015 or the 2024 African Cups there. He wasn't a consideration for that because he had been last appeared on the bench in March of 2021 at that time. However, during this period, he returned after a more than 3-year absence in June of 2024 and became a starter, which is why we have him as a definite candidate. He also played in the African National Championship, and I forgot to talk about that in part one. I meant to talk about that, but I'll just briefly say here that in the case of Zambia, there's more overlap between the A team and the players who play in those local competitions, the COSAVA Cup and the African National Championship. And so we do see more players kind of showing up for both tournaments. You pretty much have to be playing for a club in Africa, but Zambia has a lot of players playing in Africa, so they can do that. Anyway, we won't make too much of those games because most of the players don't overlap that much with the national team, but Kabaso Chongo is one of the ones who do. Anyway, a definite candidate there. We'll meet him again in the summary. Let's move on to the second candidate, Gift Mfande. He's been with the team since 2023 with 13 caps and no goals and is 22 years old. And he's one of the 5 players who plays in Israel, Hapoel Rishon LeZion. I probably won't dare to say those long Israeli team names again there, but he's been with them since 2024, and he was selected for the African Cup in 2023, but he was just on the in 2024, but he was just on the bench there. However, over the recent time, he started a lot more. That's why we have him as a definite candidate. And only one match that he wasn't called up for. And there is Gift Mfande, a definite candidate here. Next, we have Dominic Chanda at the likely level. And he is actually regularly called up, but he's almost always on the bench, Dominic Chanda. So we won't see him that much in the summary. Chanda has been with Zambia since 2020. He has 34 caps and 2 goals. So he does sub in quite a bit, it seems. And he is 29 years old, plays in Zambia with Power Dynamos, one of the bigger teams there, and he too was selected for the African Cup in 2024, but like Gift Mfande, just on the bench for all games there. Over the recent period, though, he's only started one of their games, but he has been called up quite a lot. So Dominic Chanda, a likely candidate to make the final squad. The first of our possible candidates is Frankie Musonda, and we won't go into too much detail on him. He was a starter in the 2023 African Cup, actually born in England, was Frankie Musonda, and he's only started 3 of their games over the period, and he was not selected for 6 matches. So just a possible candidate, Frankie Musonda. Finally, the last possible candidate, Stopila Sunzu, a bit of an interesting story here. He's a real veteran for the team since 2008. He's 37 years old now. And he has 98 caps and 6 goals. So he is the 10th most capped Zambian player. And I think I said 37, but he's 36. Still playing in China, but we won't go into too much detail on that, or his African Cup history, as impressive as it is. He's been with every tournament since 2010. So he has played five African Cup tournaments and a starter in each of them. It was a bit doubtful that he would be a starter in the African Cup last time in 2024. He had been off the team, but he seemed to have been called back for his experience. I think when we did the media cast there, we had put him at the possible level there too, because he was a bit older and we thought he might just be being called back for his experience. But no, well, yes, but he was called back and started all three games. So hadn't been that active prior to the Cup, but I guess they really valued his experience. It might be the same thing here. He did start 7 of their 14 games in the early part of the period, but he hasn't been selected for the last 4 matches, and at 36 years old, he may be aging out, but we thought that in the last Cup too. So I really wouldn't be surprised to see him called back in, if only for his experience or as a substitute. And given the number of candidates we have here, that is quite possible, because they usually bring 5 or 6, and we only have 5 candidates here, although they do sometimes use players in other positions, including a defensive midfielder, as you'll hear in the summary of the position, which I will now embark on. In the last African Cup in January 2024, Stopila Sunzu and Frankie Musonda, both of our possible candidates here, were the starting pair. Sunzu, now 36 years old, continued for most of the games until the end of 2024, but he has not been selected in 2025. Frankie Musonda started 3 games in 2024, but like Sunzu, was not called up in 2025 until the last 2 games, where he appeared on the bench. Various players started alongside Sunzu in March and June of 2024. But in September, Kabaso Chongo returned to the team after a 4-year absence and started all but 1 game, although he was in the position of right back in 3 of those games. Gift Mfande also appeared several times, but he also sometimes started as a right back rather than as a central defender. One surprising entry was defensive midfielder Benson Sakala, who, having started as a centre back once in 2024, and I recall from the previous media cast too that he did sometimes appear in central defence. Anyway, he lined up alongside Kabaso Chongo for all 3 of the fall 2025 games. So that looks like the pairing, the most recent pairing. But again, we're not going to do predictions until part 2. So there we go. That is the central defense situation. Let's move on to left backs. This is a position they've had a bit of trouble filling, and it doesn't help that Roderick Kabwe is gone, because in the previous media cast we did, he was the only one in this position. So let's see how they navigate that problem here. Well, we have one candidate over here. It's a definite candidate, Lubambo Musonda, and I'll talk about the kind of strange situation when we get there. But here he is as a definite candidate, Lubambo Musonda. Next, we have just a possible candidate in Kepsum Kamanga. And I'll just give a little more detail on Roderick Kabwe here. He does seem to be off the squad. He was with the team since 2012, but didn't make that African Cup. He was on the 2015 African Cup, but just on the bench there. In the most recent African Cup in January 2024, he was a starter, starting games 1 and 2. As I said, they didn't have a lot of choice about that, because they don't really have any players coded in his position. However, that African Cup was his last appearance for the club, and he may be retiring too, because he's been unattached to a club since July of 2025. So at 33 years old, it may be that he's retiring if he doesn't find another club. So we'll have to see what happens kind of to the denouement of his story. Okay, let's go back and look at the left backs there. And we begin with Lubambo Musonda. So he is actually in the last series. We were a bit baffled by him because he plays as a right back, but also as a right attacking midfielder. There, so we're not sure. He's actually captain of the team. It seems that in the recent period, though, he has moved to the left back position. So he has become the left back because they don't have one, as I said. Lubambo Musonda is a real veteran with the team since 2014 with 58 caps and 2 goals. He's 30 years old, and I think I mentioned he's a captain there. He's played for smaller clubs in various countries in Europe. He's currently with Magdeburg in Germany since 2024, but he has played in Denmark, Poland, and Armenia as well. Ever since 2014 when he left Zambia. He was selected for the 2015 African Cup and he didn't actually appear in game 1 but gained a starting position after that and was captain of the team in the last African Cup, starting 2 of the 3 games there. He only started actually less than half of the games here, and he was injured for 5 of the matches, so that's part of the reason. And we'll talk more about that in the summary of the position. We go now down to the possible level with Kepson Kamanda. He's actually a centre back. So again, they don't really have players coded as left backs. He's a centre back, but all 3 of his starts were as a left back here. He's been with the team, Kepson Kamanda, since 2019. 10 caps and no goals, and is 28 years old, and he plays for Red Arrows in Zambia. He was not selected for the 2023 Gold Cup. Actually, he had been off the team for a 4-year period prior to that, but came back to the team when named to the preliminary squad, and then was selected after that. But only selected for 5 of the 14 matches. So that's why we have him just as a possible candidate. Given the lack of left backs, though, I wouldn't be surprised if he made the final squad here. Let's summarize the position then. Roderick Kabwe, the only player coded as a left back, ever since we did the previous media cast. He started the first 2 games of the Cup, and it was right winger Edward Chilufya. Edward Chilufya is proving a very versatile player. He started the 3rd in that position, the 3rd game. After the Cup, the centre-back Kepson Kamanga played the March 2024 games, and he would get his only other start in that position as well. But the experienced Lubambo Musonda moved from his regular position to play as left back after that. He took over in June of 2024 as left back and played consistently until he was out with injury from October of 2024. We're going to see that Lubambo Musonda returned after his long injury and played at the left back in the last 2 games. So we kind of expect that he's going to be there in the Cup. But while Musonda was gone, it was the central midfielder, Obino Chisala, filling the role. Although my sources do contradict each other, and some sources have right back Benedict Chepeshi playing in the position, which actually makes a bit more sense. Nevertheless, it is an out-of-position player, but it looks like Lubambo Musonda has made it his own there. Okay, that's the left-back situation, and we move over to the right-backs. And we have no definite or likely candidates, but a player I just mentioned, Benedict Chepeshi, and we also have Matthews Banda, both of them at the possible level. At the possible but unlikely level, we have Kilian Kanguluma, And again, players at this level I'll dispense with quite quickly. He was basically on the bench for 2 of the 14 games over the period. He also was on the B team for the African National Championship, but doesn't look likely here. We have at the seemingly off the squad, Zephaniah Fury. He was a bit of a surprise selection for the previous African Cup, and he was on the bench the whole time. Actually, not even on the bench. He was on the roster, but not on the bench. Zephaniah Fury, and last appeared for the team in March of 2024. So seems to be off the squad now. Let's go back and look at the 2 possible candidates then. We have Benedict Chapeshi. He's been with the team since 2015 with 54 caps and is 29 years old. And he has been with Red Arrows in Zambia for the whole of his career. He was part of the African Cup in 2023. He just appeared in game 2 briefly as a substitute at the end of the game there. And over the last period, he started 5 of their 14 games. So, and was not selected for 8 matches, including the last 3. So, bordering on unlikely there, but he actually does seem to be the most likely right back, or most likely player coded as a right back. But I think I mentioned when we talked about central defenders that some of those players are coming across to play in this position. We'll see when we get to the summary of the position. Let's take a quick look at Matthews Banda. He's been with the team since 2024. He has 6 caps, no goals, and is 20 years old. And he also plays in Zambia. And he got his first appearance in October of 2025 and was on the bench for all 3 of the matches in 2025. So we haven't seen him on the field for the senior team yet. He got his caps kind of for the B team there. And now I think we're ready to summarize the position. So in the Cup, the 2024 African Cup, it was central defender Tandy Mwape, who is now off the team, as we saw. He played twice in the position, and Benedict Chapeshi once. Oh, I made a mistake. He started game 2 and was subbed out at 87. I thought he was subbed in at 87. So Benedict Chapeshi with 1 start in the African Cup. Chapeshi played about half of the games in the position, but increasingly as the period progressed, central defenders started playing a right back. Gift Mfande was the starter, including for the last 3 games. And we also saw central defender Kabaso Chongo with some starts in the right back position. So it looks like they're not satisfied with Chapeshi over there. But if they're not, they have to use an out-of-position central defender to cover the position. That's it for the defense. And now we're going to move on to the midfield. We're actually going to handle this a little bit differently than we do in most media casts. But just follow along and you'll get the idea. So apart from one use of a 4-2-3-1 formation in the last game of the African Cup, all of the formations that Zambia have used over the period that we're examining have just used one line of midfield. So as I said in part 1, there's no distinction between a defensive and central midfielder. However, there actually is, because in the center, they always have a defensive midfielders of a 3-man midfield. So we're going to kind of divide, because they use a 4-3-3 or a 4-5-1, 3 central midfielders all the time. We're kind of divided into a defensive midfielder alongside 2 central midfielders, because we noticed that pattern. That is the pattern. So we're going to look at those 3 positions here. So let's take a look at our candidates for the defensive midfielder. First of all, we have definite candidate Benson Sakala. And we have a likely candidate, or two likely candidates, Miguel Chewa and Kelvin Kapumbu. Kelvin Kapumbu. And then no candidates at the possible level, but two at the possible but unlikely level. So we'll deal with them as we go here. The first one is Dominic Kanda, and he, let me see, didn't start any games. He was oh, yeah, he got his first cap in March of 2025. Didn't start any games. He was subbed in for one game and then not selected for the last three matches. So a brief appearance, but he is only 21 years old, so we might see him in the future. The other possible but unlikely player is Golden Mafuenta. He was actually selected for the 2023 African Cup, but was just on the bench there. And he didn't start any games. He was subbed in for two and on the bench for one and not selected for 11 others. He actually did appear in October or on the bench in October of 2023. The biggest strike against him is that he's been unattached to a club since July of 2025. So even though he's been called up, we think that's going to affect his chances. So we consider Golden Mafuenta an unlikely candidate. Okay, let's go back and look at the likely ones in a bit more detail. Benson Sakala is a definite candidate, and he's been with Zambia since 2015 with 45 caps and no goals. He's 29 years old, and he plays for Bohemians 1905 in Czech Republic. That's a recent switch in 2025, but he was with another Czech club, Mlada Boleslav, for a couple of years before that. In fact, he has been with teams in the Czech Republic, 4 different teams since 2021. He moved from Zambia to Czech Republic there. Sakala was a selection for the 2024 African Cup, but he was on the bench for all 3 games there. Over the recent period, he started half of the games, and we have seen actually he seemed to have become important, not as a defensive midfielder, but in central defence there, Benson Sakala, so we talked about him there. The first of the likely candidates is Miguel Chewa, and he is with Zambia since 2022, 15 caps and no goals. He's 21 years old, so he was quite young when he was selected for the last African Cup. He subbed into game 2 at 87. This time I have it right, so he must maybe replaced Benjamin Chipashi there. That was the only action that he saw, though, just briefly as a substitute. But he's become more integral to the team since then, starting 9 of their 14 games. However, he wasn't selected for the last 2 matches, so we're seeing a pattern here. Maybe they're kind of given up on World Cup qualification and we're giving some of the less experienced players a run out, because it would be surprising if Miguel Chewa wasn't selected, as you'll see when we get to the summary of the position. Anyway, he plays for Hibernian in Scotland since 2025. That's a recent move from Young Boys in Switzerland. So pretty good club connections there. And Miguel Chewa, I do expect to see. He's a likely candidate here. The other likely candidate is Kelvin Kapumbu, and he's been with Zambia since 2019 with 41 caps, and he's 29 years old. He played in Zambia, but he did actually play for a team in Israel in 2024. Otherwise, he's been with various teams in Zambia. Kapumbu started in the 2024 African Cup, started games 1 and 2, but he was subbed out of game 2 at halftime and wasn't seen after that. Over the recent period, he's only started 5 games. He was not selected for 7. So I'm not sure why we have him as a likely candidate with that record, but we must have had some reason, so we'll leave him where he is. Okay, let us move on to the summary of the position then. So once again, we're talking about the central midfielder in the 4-3-3 or even in the 4-5-1-2, the guy right in the middle. And this position always turns out to be filled by defensive midfielders for Zambia. So we'll treat it almost like a defensive midfield position. Kelvin Kupumba played the role in the first two games of the 2024 African Cup. The third game, as we mentioned, it's only use of a double line midfield or a 4-2-3-1 formation. So it's actually an attacking midfielder in that case, and the two defensive midfielders. I'm not sure I recorded it, but we'll mention it at some point, I'm sure. Kelvin Kapumba, after losing the position for the third game of the Cup, did not return to it, or in fact to any starting position until November of 2024. Since then, though, he has 6 starts in the position, including the last 2 games. So that's why we have him as a likely candidate. He's kind of come back into the team. It was Miguel Chewa who was mostly in the position after the Cup. But Chewa was struck by injury in November 2024, which was what allowed Kelvin Kapumba back into the starting position. The two effectively shared the role after that, but Chewa was not selected for the last 2 games. In the position a few times was Benson Sakala, actually, although, as we saw, he's become a central defender towards the end of the period. And when Benson Sakala was playing in the centre, we did see Miguel Chewa sometimes move to the left of centre. We'll call that a left midfielder here. So there we go, in the centre. So again, we won't get to predictions before we until we do part 2, but let's move on. Now, oddly, we're not going to actually do central midfielders to midfielders here. We're going to divide them into left and right. And the truth is, it's a bit messier than I'm going to present here because they do switch sides. But it actually did work for us to kind of categorize them into left and right midfielders. So that's what we're going to do. Let's begin on the left side and look at the candidates. These are all coded as central midfielders. And yeah, our left and right thing is a little bit artificial, but actually more accurate than you might expect. Okay, for left midfielders, we have a definite candidate in Obino Chisala, and then a likely candidate in Emmanuel Banda. And then we have a player off the team or seemingly off the squad, Golden Mashata. So I'll just talk about him a little bit here. He last appeared for the national team in March of 2024. Golden Mashata. So we don't really expect to see him. Let's take a look at the 2 candidates we do have and that are likely. We have Obina Chinsala as a definite candidate. He's new to the team since 2024, but he already has 10 caps, no goals. He was a bit of a latecomer because he's 26 years old. And he plays for probably the biggest club in Sudan, Al Merrikh Omdurman. And he also played in Mozambique as well before that, and in Zambia prior to that. So Chisala got his first cap in March of 2024, so right at the beginning of the period we're looking at. And he started 8 of the games. So just 1 match that he wasn't selected for, so that's why we consider him a definite candidate. The next one is Emmanuel Banda at the likely level. He has Banda Jr. on his shirt, I noticed in the previous African Cup. And Banda, I'm going to say Emmanuel Banda because there are several Bandas involved with Zambia. So we'll try to use the first names when we mention them. Emmanuel Banda is one of those 5 players who plays in Israel. He's just done so since 2025, though. He's been all over the place in Saudi Arabia, Croatia, Sweden, Belgium, Portugal, France and Portugal. I actually kind of gave it in backwards order there. So a kind of a world traveler is Emmanuel Banda. He was selected for the 2024 African Cup and was a starter. He started and finished all 3 games in that tournament. However, over the recent period, he started only half of the games, and he is usually called up, though. In only 2 of the 14 games was he not called up. He also scored one of the goals in qualifying for this tournament. So those are the 2 candidates. Let's summarize the position then. Emmanuel Banda started all 3 games of the Cup. He did switch sides once with Kings Kanwa, who played 2 games. And Miguel Chewa came in and replaced him in the 3rd game there. Going forward, Banda was the main player in the position, especially in the early part of the period. And as we saw, he started 7 of the 14 games. However, he was a starter less so towards the end of the period and was just a substitute for the last 2 games. That's why we actually moved him down to likely. He did lose some ground over the period to Obina Chisala, whose first cap was at the beginning of the period in March of 2024. By September 2024, though, Chisala was starting regularly, though he too was a sub in the last game. Or even possibly the last 2 games. It was out of position attackers filling the role in the last 2 games there. So a bit up in the air at the end there, but we do see those last 2 games seem to have been a bit irregular. Okay, let's move over to the right side of the central midfield. And here we have a definite candidate in Kings Kanwa, and a likely candidate in Edward Chilufa. Well, we've already seen him in other positions. He's coded as a right winger, but actually has been all over the field. We're going to see him as a forward as well. So we've just moved him here for the discussion, but it's kind of hard to pin down what his actual period or what his actual position is. But most of his starts during this period were in the midfield there. So we'll take a look at Edward Chilufa. At the possible level, we have Klatus Chama there. And at the possible but unlikely level, we have Larry Boilia. I spent half of the last African Cup figuring out whether his name was Larry or Rally. It turns out it's both. Rally seems to be his nickname, but his official name is Larry Boilia. He's just at the possible but unlikely level. He was selected for the previous African Cup in 2024, but he only appeared briefly in game 1 when he was subbed in extra time. Over the period, he didn't start any games, but he was not selected for 12 of them. So he was off the team. I wish I could tell you when his last appearance was, but I don't seem to have it written down. Anyway, used very little over the last period. So we'll talk more about him, I suppose, if he is selected. Let's go back and look at the main candidates. So Kings Kanwa, currently one of the main players for Zambia. He's been with the team since 2019 and he has 42 caps and 7 goals. He's 26 years old and is playing in Israel, actually his second stint in Israel there with Hapoel Beersheva. It's one of the names I can pronounce. He's also played in Serbia and Belgium and Russia. So quite experienced there, and he was a starter in the 2024 African Cup, starting games 1 and 2, but actually surprisingly lost his starting position for game 3, where he was only as a substitute. I gotta say, Kings Kanwa scored my favorite goal of the tournament in the African Cup, so I'm going to just pause here and talk about it. I really recommend looking at it. It was their first goal against Congo DR. And it was a wonderful goal. The goalkeeper came too far out of his net. The player he tackled was alert and picked up the ball and threw it in quickly. And Kangwa was alert to make a great lob into the net. So a wonderful goal by those accounts. But what makes it even more wonderful is that Kings Kangwa was number 22, and the goal was scored at 22 minutes and 22 seconds. I just love that story. So he's one of my favorite. You know, Zambia does stuff like that, which is why they're one of my favorite teams. Anyway, Kings Kangwa started most of the games over the period, as we'll see, and is a very important player for them. The next, the likely candidate is Edward Chilufya, and he has been with Zambia since 2020 with 22 caps and 1 goal. And is 26 years old. And he plays for Midtjylland in Denmark since 2022, and with Djurgårdens in Sweden before that. So some good Scandinavian teams there, Chilufya. And he was selected for the 2022 African Cup, but he was subbed into game 2 at 87. Wow, this game 2 anyway. He was subbed into game 2 at 87 and went on to start game 3 there. So Chilufya started 4 of their 14 games over the period. Wasn't selected for 7 matches, but as we've seen, kind of very versatile and being used in various positions. So we have Chilufya as a likely candidate. I just got a bit distracted because I noticed something about Kings Kangwa that I wanted to say, is that he scored one of their goals in qualifying, and it was a late winning goal against Sierra Leone. So that's what kind of distracted me when I was describing Chilufya. Okay, the possible candidate is Clatous Chama. He's actually an attacking midfielder, so like Edward Chilufya, we've kind of moved him here since most of his starts were in the central midfield. Clatous Chama is with Zambia since 2015, has 44 caps and 7 goals, and is 34 years old. And he plays for a team in Tanzania. He's played for several teams in Tanzania, 2 of their biggest teams, Young Africans and Simba. And he also played for a team in Morocco there. So he's quite experienced in terms of his African travels. And he was selected for the 2024 African Cup, Clatous Chama. And he's subbed into 2 games there. Over this period, he started 5 of their 14 games, so not so many. But he's called up. He was called up for 5 others, and just 4 matches that he wasn't selected for. So we consider him a possible candidate. I would say bordering on likely there. And okay, so now we're ready to summarize the position. So we're talking about the central midfielder just to the right of the in the 3-man central midfield. So with 12 starts over the period, it's Kings Kangwa almost always in the position of the right side of the 3-man midfield. However, some of those 12 starts were in different positions, as we'll see. Also getting most of their starts in this position in the central midfield. Most of their starts, Edward Chifula and Clatous Chama. So Chilufya started twice in the midfield and twice more in more attacking positions. Clatous Chama started 3 games in the central midfield, and his other 2 starts were as a left attacking midfielder. Chama was quite active in the fall of 2024. Either as a sub or as a starter, but he didn't see field time in any of the last 3 games. Edward Chilufya is the opposite, didn't see that much action or was kind of off the team for a while in the middle of the period, but was used in the last 3 games. There. So that is the right midfielder position, pretty much Kings Kangwa, the main man there. Okay, that is it. We're done with the midfield. Phew, And we're going to move on to attacking midfielders now. And we're going to begin with the left side. So just something I mentioned in most media accounts here, that we kind of have our own categorization for this. It could be a left winger in say a 4-4-2 formation, an attacking midfielder in a 4-2-3-1 formation, or a forward in a 4-3-3 formation. We consider them all to be the left attacker. So there we have it, and we'll look at the candidates first. We have Joseph Sabobo Banda as a definite candidate, and I'll have to wait till the Cup to see what they call him, because on websites I sometimes see Joseph Banda and sometimes Joseph Sabobo. So we'll see once we get to the Cup. Surprisingly, just at the likely level is Fashion Sakala, and you'll see why we're even generous to put him there. Also at the likely level, Kelvin Kampamba, not to be confused, Kelvin Kampamba, with the central midfielder, with the central or the defensive midfielder, Kelvin Kapumbu. So try to separate those in your head. I've had a bit of a tough time doing that. Okay, next we have no candidates at the possible level, but at the possible but unlikely level, we have Albert Kangwanda. Albert Kangwanda last appeared for the team in March of 2022, but he does seem to have played for the B team in 2024. I'm not sure why we put him on the list, to be honest. There usually is a reason. His name might have come up on one of the less reliable websites. That sometimes happens. So it might be that I've just heard his name thrown around and I put him on the list. Okay, we have two players seemingly off the squad. One is Evans Kangwa. He actually has a lot of experience. He participated in the 2012 and 2015 African Cups, though mostly as a sub or on the bench. But he last appeared. He didn't make the squad for the 2024 African Cup, but he did appear after that. Last appeared for the team in October of 2024. So Evans Kanwa seemingly off the squad. Charles Zulu also seemingly off the squad. Last appeared in November of 2019, but has been playing for the B team. And sometimes some of those players are called up. Yeah, that's as much as I'll say about that. Let's move and look at the candidates here. Joseph Sabobo Banda, then, a definite candidate. He's been new to Zambia since 2024 with 9 caps and no goals, and he's just 20 years old. And he is one of the players playing in Israel, also for Hapoel Beersheva there. So we have 2 Zambia players on that team. Prior to that, he was with FC Zurich in Switzerland, played more for their second team there in Switzerland, and prior to that was in Zambia. So Sabobo Banda got his first cap in June of 2024, and he started 4 of their remaining 10 games, but he was always called up. So he was subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 2 others. So we're not saying he's going to be a starter, but we do think he's definite in terms of being selected for the final squad. Fashion Zakala, the first of the likely candidates, is one of their main players. So I was very shocked to see that after the last African Cup, he didn't play any games until he came back in the fall of 2025. So he was off the team for more than a year and a half. I have no idea why. Anyway, I'm sure he'll be selected if he's back on the team because he's a main player. Fashion Sakala has been with Zambia since 2017. 35 caps and 10 goals. He scored 2 of their goals in World Cup qualifying there, so an important player for them. And he's 28 years old. He is currently with Al Faya in Saudi Arabia, but previously played for Rangers in Scotland and for teams in Belgium and Russia. there. He wasn't, even though he was with the team since 2017. Um, no, they didn't play in any African Cups. He's been scoring in qualification, though. He scored five of their 8 goals in World Cup 2022 qualifying. That's why I've been calling him an important player. In the 2023 African Cup, he started games 1 and 2, and then surprisingly lost his position as a starter, just came in as a sub for game 3. So maybe that has something to do with him being off the team. I really don't know. Anyway, Fashion Sakala returned after a 20-month absence in September of 2025, but started all 3 games in the fall of 2025 there. So there's a story behind that I don't know. But a likely candidate, almost definite, I would say. Kelvin Kapamba is the second likely candidate here. He is a veteran since 2013 with 59 caps and 7 goals. He's 29 years old, and he currently moved back to Zambia to play for Zesco United for the second time in 2025. But he had been playing in Libya for 2 teams before that. He basically left Zambia, moved to Libya, and then moved back to Zambia. Kelvin Kapamba was selected for the 2024 African Cup, but he was just on the bench during that tournament. But he's been more active recently. He scored 1 of their 7 goals in qualifying for this tournament and started 6 of their 14 games over the period. However, he was not selected for 5 matches. He's one of several players who also played for the B team in the African National Championship. So, again, more overlap for Zambia than for most teams there. Okay, those are the candidates for left attacker. Let's look at how the position has played out over the periods. Okay, and before I begin the summary, I want to point out that Fashion Sakala is actually coded as a forward, but we moved him here because most of his starts were as a left attacking midfielder. Okay, so starting with the cup, it was Fashion Sakala playing the first game as the left attacking midfielder in the cup. He moved to the right side for game 2, and Lamek Banda came in and started the second and third games on the left. After the cup, though, Lamek Banda only appears as a right attacking midfielder, so we'll basically move him over to that position, talk about him when we do that position. Back to the left side, though, Fashion Sakala did not play there as one might expect. In fact, he did not appear on the team at all until coming back to the team and to this position for the last 3 games in the fall of 2025. So in his absence, his position seemed unsettled, with several players getting starts. We have seen Klautus Chama as one of them, and the 2 most commonly there were attacking midfielder Kelvin Kampamba, not to be confused with defensive midfielder Kelvin Kapumbu. We've moved him also Kampamba to this position, and Joseph Sabobo Banda, each with about 3 starts in the position. And both of those players, Sabobo Banda and Kampamba, are seen in other positions, so we're going to meet them later on. However, neither of them got a start in any of the last 3 games. Okay, so that is the left side. Let's go over to the right attacking midfield position and introduce the candidate. So I said, even though he's coded as a left attacking midfielder, we're moving Lamek Banda here, but he's only at the portable level. Then we have Edward Chilufya, who's proving to be quite a versatile player in this period. He's coded as a right winger, but we moved him to left midfield just to make the discussion easier, and because most of his starts were there. But he is a candidate over here. But apart from Lamek Banda, we have the possible but unlikely Jackson Kampamba. He was got his first cap in November of 2024. He didn't start any games. He was subbed in for one and then not selected for the matches after that. So just made a brief appearance, Jackson Kambamba. We also have Kamfani Lungu, who is seemingly off the squad. Last appeared for the national team on the bench in June of 2024. We have Frederick Mulambia. He was actually selected for the African Cup in 2024, but he wasn't even on the bench for any of the 3 games and hasn't appeared. No, he has appeared since, but he wasn't selected for any of the last 12 matches. So just appeared in March 2024 and has not been called up since. Sorry, I had to cough there. And a third seemingly off the squad candidate, Joshua Mutale, last appeared for the national team in March of 2024. So we don't expect to see any of those. And it really just leaves us Lamek Banda to talk about here. Banda has been with the team since 2022. He has 20 caps and 3 goals and is 24 years old. And he plays for Lecce in Italy since 2022 and has been with teams in Russia and Israel. He was selected for the African Cup in 2024, subbed into game 1 and then got a starting position for games 2 and 3, as we saw, starting on the left there, but just on the right during the period we're examining from March 2024. And actually we're ready to do the position summary here. In the Cup, the position of right attacking midfielder was played by 3 different players. We have Lubambo Musonda, who during this period has been moved to the left back position. He was the starter in game 1. Fashion Sakala, as we saw, moved over to the right side for game 2. And then Edward Chilufya. He could appear here, as I said, but we moved him to central midfielder and talked about him there because that's where he was mostly during the period. Anyway, it is a position, right attacking midfielder, that they struggle to fill, and it's mostly played by out of position players who we've already met. So a couple of players just in single appearances played the first 2 games after the Cup, and the position was not used in the third. After that, we have central midfielder Kings Kangwa making 3 appearances as a right attacking midfielder over the period. Lamek Banda had 4 starts. 2 of those in September 2024, but actually he struggled with injuries for most of the period, but he did return to the position at the end for 2 of the last 3 games, Lamek Banda. Also appearing a couple of times were attacking midfielder Kelvin Kampamba and Joseph Sabobo Banda. We talked about both of those players as left attacking midfielders. Okay, so a bit unclear who's going to be the right attacking midfielder, probably an out of position player. And we move on to, well, we'll talk about central attackers, but actually we just have one player at the possible level here. They don't use the position. I think I've mentioned they used it just once, and that was in the last game of the African Cup, so not actually in the period we're looking at. And I'll just say that the forward, Kennedy Musonda, filled the role the only time it was used. However, we've moved a couple of players coded as attacking midfielders to positions they played in more. So we just have kind of one remaining here. At the possible level, it's Chipyoka Songa. Chipyoka Songa is new to the team since 2024. He has 2 caps and no goals and is 21 years old. And he plays in Israel for Hapoel Petah Tikva since 2025. He played for another team in Israel on loan before that. So he's been loaned out to teams in Israel since 2023 and was in Zambia before that. So Songa got his first appearance on the bench in September 2024. Didn't start any games, but he was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 7. And then not selected for the last 3 matches. So we do think he's a possible candidate there, and we'll move on from the central attacking midfielder to forwards. Well, we have a category for secondary strikers, but they neither have any of those nor do they use the positions. So we jump right to the forward position and look at the candidates. We have two definite candidates. The first one, Patson Daka, and the second one is Kennedy Musonda, I'm sorry. We also have Fashion Sakala as a forward here, but we moved him to left attacking midfield. Beyond these two definite candidates, we go straight down to possible but unlikely, where we have three candidates. The first one is Ricky Banda. Ricky Banda was not selected for the last four matches and didn't start any games. So possible but unlikely. We'll talk about him more if he is selected for the final squad. The second one is Francisco Mwepa. He was not selected for the last five matches and started none of their games as well. So doesn't seem to have made his way into the squad much. And finally, Andrew Feary in the possible but unlikely level, and he was new to the squad when he appeared in their last game just before the African Cup, but he didn't make the squad and has not been selected for the last 12 matches, so kind of used shortly after the Cup and then not used anymore, Andrew Feary. And beyond those three possible but unlikely candidates, we have two who are seemingly off the squad. The first one, Kingston Mutandwa, last appeared in October 2024, and then Abraham Siankomba last appeared in March of 2024. So again, we'll talk about them more if they're selected, but we don't think they will be. Let's take a look at our two definite candidates then in more detail. We have Patson Daka, and he is the one with the top team, top club affiliation for Zambia. He plays for Leicester in England since 2021. I'm getting ahead of myself a bit though, because I should tell you he's been with Zambia since 2015, and he has 51 caps and an impressive 21 goals for the 27-year-old. Before Leicester in 2021, he played for Red Bull Salzburg in Austria and another team in Austria in 2017. He moved from Zambia in 2017. In African Cup 2021 qualifying, Daka scored five of their 8 goals, and for 2023 qualifying, 5 of their 12 goals. In recent, I don't think he scored any goals for qualifying for this tournament, but he did score 3 goals, 3 of their 10 goals in 2026 World Cup qualifying. So quite prolific is Patson Daka, and a definite candidate here. Next is Kennedy Musonda, also a definite candidate. He's been on the team since 2019, 19 caps and 4 goals in that time, and he's 28 years old. And he's the last of our players who plays in Israel for Hapoel Ramat Gan since 2025. And he played for Young Africans in Tanzania, probably their top team, for a couple of years before that, and then for several clubs in Zambia over his time. He was selected, Kennedy Musonda, for the 2024 African Cup. He subbed into Game 2 and then went on to start Game 3 there. He was a top scorer, Kennedy Musonda, in qualifying for this tournament. He scored 4 of their 7 goals, so more than half of their goals for this tournament, and started 9 of their 14 games, so has been used quite a bit. 9 of their 14 games and subbed in for the 5 others, so he hasn't been on the bench and suffered non-selection either, Kennedy Musonda. So a definite candidate to make the squad. Let's take a look at the position of forward. I think we said at the beginning that 86% of the time it's a single forward, and then in 2 of the 14 games, a double forward position. In the Cup, it was Patson Daka starting all 3 games as a lone forward, and that continued until September 2024, except for one game in June where they used 2 forwards, and he was accompanied by the attacking midfielder Kelvin Kampamba. However, Patson Daka was injured for the fall 2024 games, so Kennedy Musonda became the forward, and he was accompanied in one of the games by the versatile right winger Edward Chilufya, who we presented as a central midfielder in this media cast. Yes, so Kennedy Musonda remained the starting forward through November and March, even though Daka was recovered for the November games. He was not selected for the squad. But Daka did return in the fall of 2025 and resumed his position immediately, starting as the lone forward in all 3 of their fall 2025 World Cup qualifiers. So that is the situation in the forward line, and that is the situation for the team, since that's our last category. And so we move on to section 3. And we welcome new listeners to section 3 here, because we're going to release this as a short version of the media cast on Zambia's players. In the full version then, I'm saying this to those who are joining us, we did introduce the candidates and their likelihood of making the final squad. And we talked about who has been the main player in each position, and the position, a kind of a summary of the position. So for those just listening to the short version, if you want those details, the full version is available. And there you'll find the reasons for our predictions that I'm going to present in the review here, and some career information on those players. For those who have listened, though, this is just a review summary. And as I've been saying throughout, we're not predicting the starters here. We're going to save that for part 2, which will come out in early to mid-December. So let's go through the team here. We have a strange situation with the manager. He was fired recently after their World Cup qualifying campaign didn't go well. So in October of 2025, he was fired, and they don't have a new manager. So we'll have to wait to see how that story turns out in part 2. For goalkeepers, we have a definite candidate in Lawrence Mulenga, a likely candidate in Tosta Nsabata, 2 possible candidates, Charles Kalumba and Patrick Chuma. And I won't go into the candidates below that, the possible but unlikely or seemingly off the squad candidates. So really 4 realistic candidates there. Moving upfield, we have central defenders and 2 definite candidates, Kabaso Chongo and Gift Mfande. And we have the likely candidate, Dominic Chanda, and 2 possible candidates, Frankie Musonda and veteran Stopila Sunzu. Those 5 candidates for central defence. Left back position, we've seen they've had trouble filling the position. One of their the one guy who did play that position, Roderick Kabwe, now seemingly off the squad. And so we have an out of position player, Lubambo Musonda, seems to have taken over the left back position. We have no likely candidates for left back, but at the possible level, Kebson Kamanga, who's actually a central defender. So again, out of position players there. On the right side, we have no definite or likely candidates, but 2 possible candidates in Benedict Chapeshi and Matthews Banda. That's it for the defense. Moving up to the midfield, they usually have 3 midfielders, and in the middle of those 3 is a defensive midfielder. And we have a definite candidate in Benson Sakala, even though recently he's moved back to central defense. And 2 likely candidates, Miguel Chewa and Kelvin Kapumbu. Those are the defensive midfielders. Central midfielders, we've divided into left and right. And so on the left, we have a definite candidate in Obino Chisala and a likely candidate in Emmanuel Banda. And then on the right, we have a definite candidate in Kings Kangwa, a likely candidate in Edward Chilufa. He's a versatile player coded as a right winger, but has played most of his starts in the midfield during this period. So we put him here. Edward Chilufya, and a possible candidate in Klatus Chama. All three of those players do play in different positions. We see them maybe playing as attackers as well. Okay, that's the midfield though. We move on to the attacking midfield. Over on the left side, a definite candidate in Joseph Sabobo Banda, and likely candidates Fashion Sakala and Kelvin Kampamba. And we explained why Fashion Sakala is just at the likely level here. He was off the team for 20 months is why. Okay, let's go to the right attacker side. No definite or likely candidates, and a possible candidate in Lamek Banda there, but another position where they've struggled to fill, and we'll probably see an out-of-position player in that role. Central attackers, we actually moved some of them around to positions they've been playing in because Zambia really doesn't use this position. So we're just left here with Chipyoka Songa at the portable level. And then the forward line, we have two definite candidates in Pat Sandaka and Kennedy Musonga. And Passion Sakala also actually coded as a forward, but we moved him to the left attacker role. So that's what we have here. And let's move into our closing. Well, we've reviewed the candidates, a review of injuries for Zambia. Just like in 2023, they're kind of blessed with no injury concerns. So in part 2, we'll review this, but it would be players injured between now and then, and they'll be hoping to have as much luck as they had in the previous cup with no injuries. So closing thoughts, well, we have a couple of positions. It's a pretty thin squad. We have a lot of players playing out of position on Zambia because they don't have a huge pool to choose from, it seems. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Let's preview part 2, which will come out in early to mid-December. Once the final rosters are published, that is why we have to put off part 2 until we know who was actually selected. So we're going to summarize. We did the summary of positions in part 1. What am I talking about? So we'll look at the selections and let you know who was selected and who wasn't. We'll pay particular attention to any notable non-selections and then any surprise inclusions. For example, I wouldn't be surprised if Stopila Sunsu is chosen again. Any new players, and again, I wouldn't be surprised because the squad is a bit thin. If there are any injuries to report, we'll do that. And then one of the main purposes of part 2 then is to predict the starters. So we hope you'll join us for that, and we will see you either for our next team or our next look at Zambia. We would like to thank Pixabay and Cold Fingers for the wonderful music used in this media cast. The title of the piece is Eid Mubarak.